Okay, guys, we are here doing lesson 45 in Algebra 2. All right, and here on lesson 45, we are going to be looking at the difference of two squares theorem. All right, think about the fact that if I have x squared equals 36, all right, that's the same as x squared minus 36 equals 0. Yes? You see what I did? All I did was move that 36 to the other side. So now if I take this x squared minus 36 equals 0, I can factor that. I'm going to have the x, the 6, and the 6, and plus and minus. Remember we talked before about the fact that when I have the difference of two squares, that my factors are going to be the square root of the first term, the square root of the second term, and the opposite signs. And that way it gets rid of the middle term. Okay, remember with this being, I need to find what is the value for x that makes this first one 0. So if I have x plus 6 equals 0, the value of x that would make that true would be x equals negative 6. Okay, and looking at this second one, x minus 6 equals 0, the value of x here would be 6. Okay, so I have here that x is going to equal plus or minus 6. If x is positive or negative 6, those are the values that I can plug in here for x to make this work. Okay? And so going from that, we can kind of create a theorem. P squared equals q squared. If that's true, then p squared minus q squared equals 0. So then I have p plus q times p minus q equals 0. Okay, and so then P is going to equal positive or negative Q. Good. So look at this. If this is going to be my difference of two squares theorem, if P and Q are real numbers, and if P squared equals Q squared, then P equals positive or negative Q. Okay, so if P squared equals Q squared, then P equals positive or negative Q. Okay, all right, let's do this. Another little example with some numbers. If I have that x squared equals 9, all right, then I'm going to be able to say that x equals positive or negative the square root of 9. Okay, I'm taking the square root of both sides then. So the square root of x squared is x. The square root of 9 is going to be plus or minus the square root of 9, which is going to come over here, and we'll say that x then equals plus or minus 3. Okay? If x squared equals 3, then x equals plus or minus the square root of 3. All right, notice up here we started with p squared equals q squared, then we have the square root of p, which is this would take the square root of both sides, and you wind up with that p equals positive or negative q. So here I started with the x squared and took the square root, I get x. Started here with 3, take the square root, I get just the square root of 3 and that positive and negative. Okay. Here if I've got x plus 5 squared equals 11. All right, go ahead and just take the square root of both sides. So that's then going to tell me that x plus 5 equals the square root of 11. All right, we're going to move the 5 to the other side. Okay, this is going to be positive, plus and minus. So now I have that x equals negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 11. Okay, and going back, starting with that p squared equals q squared. Okay, take the square root of both sides. So then p equals positive or negative q. All right, and we can think back to that x squared equals 9. All right, if I take the square root of both sides, the square root of x squared is going to be x. Well, the square root of 9 is going to be positive 3 because 3 times 3 is 9. It could also be negative 3 because negative 3 times negative 3 equals 9. Okay, that's where we're getting this plus or minus from, because I can take a negative. If I square a negative, I get the positive. Or if I square the positive, I get the positive. Okay? Here's one for you guys to try. Let's take x minus 3 squared equals 13. Okay? You can pause the recording and do that. So if you take the square root of both sides, you're going to get then that x minus 3 equals the square root of 13, and it's going to be positive or negative. We're going to move the 3 to the other side, and we find that x equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 13. All right? So that would be then that x winds up equaling 3 plus the square root of 13. I can plug this value back in up there, or x is going to equal 3 minus the square root of 13. All right, let's do another one, and we'll take it and we'll plug the answer in and see how that goes for us. If we've got x plus 17 squared equals 2, take the square root of both sides, and we get x plus 17 equals plus or minus the square root of 2. We're going to move that 17 over, so x equals negative 17 plus or minus the square root of 2. All right, so let's think if we were to try and check this, we would take this amount right here and we would plug it into our original equation. So I'm going to have negative 17 plus the square root of 2 plus 17 squared equals 2. Okay, well, I've got this negative 17 and I've got this positive 17, and those are going to cancel each other out. So now I have the square root of 2 squared equals 2. Well, if I do the square root of 2 times the square root of 2, that does indeed equal 2, right? Okay, so over here, if I've got, that was trying this out with the positive, let's say I've got negative 17 minus the square root of 2, okay, plus 17, back to our original problem up there, squared equals 2, okay, so I've just plugged this into that. Okay, again, negative 17 and positive 17, those two cancel out. So I have negative the square root of 2 squared equals 2. All right, so the negative square root of 2 times the negative square root of 2 does indeed equal 2. When I do the negative times the negative, it becomes a positive. Okay, so as you're doing those, you're able to take what you get for your answer, and you should be able to plug it back into the original equation and see that they do indeed work. Okay, and that is all there is for lesson 45. I hope that helps.